Hi, everyone. Welcome to this public lecture organized by the Ottawa Network for Borderline Personality Disorder, otherwise known as ONBPD. You'll hear us refer to that. This lecture is being recorded December 11th, 2025. Our topic this evening is a few things we'd like you to know, some wisdom from those who know a thing or two about BPD. My name's Natalie Barnes. I'm a volunteer and serve as Communications Director at ONBPD on the board. Ontario Network for BPD is a federally incorporated registered charity in Canada consisting of volunteers who deliver the Family Connections support program to people with loved ones with BPD. I'm also delighted to introduce Danielle Langlois. She's our CEO and Family Connections course leader, as well as Floyd Kelly. He's the president of ONBPD. During tonight's lecture, all attendees are set to listen and view only mode. Cameras and microphones are turned off. If you wish to ask a question, please use the Q&A tool to send your question in writing. Shawn, our moderator, will read your questions to the speakers at the end of the webinar, time permitting. You can remain anonymous by checking the anonymous checkbox before submitting your question. We also ask that you do not include any confidential, private, or identifying information in your question. Materials presented in this webinar should be considered as information only and not advice. Now it's my pleasure to introduce this evening's moderator, Shawn Fisk. Shawn is a nationally recognized educator, clinician, and peer leading, specializing in compassionate care and stigma-informed practice. Shawn co-designs healthcare systems and partners with community organizations to advance dignity-centered approaches across Canada. His work is grounded in over 20 years of experience accessing and navigating systems of care for substance use, health, and mental health needs, including BPD. And now, Shawn, I'd like to hand it over to you for full introductions and welcoming our speakers today, Melanie, Lauren, Alan, and Jaden. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Danielle. Thank you to ONBPD. I'm a former board member and quite a huge supporter of a movement of family caregivers coming together and making a decision to fill a gap on their own, a gap we all too often experience when our loved ones have what some would call borderline personality disorder, and we find out that they're deemed to be unhelpable, folks? They're deemed to be the forgotten. As I work with clinicians across the country, and I'm a clinician myself, my colleagues would tell me things like, oh no, it's one of them, you take them. Okay? Because the clinician feels like they won't then get a win. And for those of you in the clinical purview, you know that your colleagues run from us. And who are we? We're a group coming together today to have a panel all identifying and all having the diagnosis of borderline personality disorder. And as we talk in the wait room, waiting for you to join us, we find out that although we do gather in groups, peer, friends, and otherwise, and you'll hear about that today a little bit, this might be the first formalized panel of us, certainly in the Canadian landscape, potentially in history. And so I just want to offer that I've been in this lecture series before, and it's been really important to me. And I've said a few things about what worked for me, what worked for my clients. I've had the privilege of answering your questions and talking about the most stigmatized healthcare condition, somewhere around the same level of stigmatization people experience for substance use disorders. Heaven forbid, like myself and many, you experience both. A little bit of this, a little bit of that. And what do we experience then is absolute othering and discrimination. We've spoken in the past about things like DBT, behavioral therapy, and the gaps in those things and whether they do or don't help. We've spoken about all sorts of things, and I'll offer to you one more piece. The thing I've gotten the most response from in organizations and groups like this and in these past lectures is that I put my hand up and said, although I meet the criteria for the diagnosis of borderline personality disorder, I sure don't like the way it's called because there's no such thing as a disordered personality. Because that's a fundamental piece of who I am rather than a thing I'm experiencing. My personality is me. I am not borderline personality disorder. It's just something I navigate. And so as I experience emotional dysregulation on a scale, I just want to offer to you folks that this is such a difficult position we get put in by our loved ones, our family caregivers, and our clinicians, that outside of these folks here that I'm going to tell you about in a second, I had a hard time populating this panel. We had people working in emergency departments, a particular friend of mine in the Ottawa region, actually, who thought better of coming here for belief that she would put her career in jeopardy. And we could all say, really? But of course, she'd be putting her career in jeopardy, eh? And so, what a privilege it is to sit here with my friends and talk to you just a little bit and hopefully have a conversation that you've not yet heard. But I'll have you know, like any type of peer room, I'm well seasoned and long in the tooth in some of those types of peer rooms. Like any type of peer room, we gather as people and speak like this to each other all the time. And we just were. And I feel like now this is the meeting after the meeting. And so I'm just going to start to introduce some people that I have the real privilege of knowing because I couldn't wait for today to come because we don't have a monopoly on the things we're saying to you today, but they help us and we hope they help you. And the caveat to it is that we serve people in the healthcare industry who also have BPD. We help people in our work and at our schools and in our universities and in our family units and in our communities. We also know others like us and we support them both professionally and personally. And so in starting our nuanced conversation, I just want to introduce to start off my friend Melanie. So how do I get to know Melanie? A little while ago, some people told me I should be on social media, and I thought that's going to be the worst thing ever for me of all people, and I'm not going to do it. And I did it anyway. And I've cascaded into a number of people, and Melanie is someone I noticed there actually. And I sent her a message and said, I need to know you because she was saying these wonderful things that were based in dignity about those she serves and about her own experiences. And now I've gotten to know Melanie a little bit. And it's been really cool. And Melanie, I don't get to talk to you enough. So why don't you come on in and maybe just give a few minutes about who you are and what your experiences are at BPD.
Thank you so much, Shawn. It was beautiful, everything you said. And I made a joke earlier, 10 minutes ago. I said, how can I talk about myself in 2 minutes of the story about somebody with BPD? And I always actually say this, that people with the diagnosis is as if we've all lived the same life, but a million different lives. We all can relate to each other. So I have to say this, though, 10 years ago when I got the diagnosis, I went to Google and it was almost impossible. Everybody was like, what is this? It's terrible. And everywhere I went, there was nothing out there. I couldn't find anybody. Honestly, just like Shawn said, it was hard to find a panel of people to even relate to. I couldn't find help. Um, and I'm not saying that in a mean way to anybody out there that cares about people for BPD. I'm saying it in the sense that when I was handed my diagnosis, I was handed a pamphlet this big, and I talk about this on multiple podcasts. But the pamphlet gave me more overwhelm than I already felt at that moment. And I had to go from A to Z, finding DBT groups, finding therapists. And at that moment, I had the choice to go this way down or go this way up and change my life. And, when you already feel woo as an emotional roller coaster, it's really overwhelming. And I can tell you those experiences in the beginning were not easy. And you have to go through that with your same clients now as I own my own clinic. But the reason I do this is because I want people to know that I don't want them to feel the feelings I had in the beginning. I want them to know that you're not alone, that even though it feels like you're alone in that moment, you're not alone. And so I know I'm not telling you the story of me entirely because I can't, but the truth is that every person with BPD is different, but we all feel so much more than you'll ever know. And so I don't want anyone to give up. And because there was that choice that I had 10 years ago, almost to give up. And many of us have. And it's the gravity of it is so sad. And I want the world to understand that the stigma to me is sadder than anything because the misunderstanding of how much somebody cares and loves the world to the level that I do and that we do is profound. So my journey has been long. I can't wait to talk more today, but now I'm a clinician. I own my own clinic based mainly just for BPD called Mind Over Borderline. I've been advocating for 10 years. I've done a lot of stuff, and I'd say a lot more, but I don't feel I need to in this moment. So I'm going to hand it back to Shawn.
Thanks, Melanie. You see, folks, I needed to know Melanie for sure. And so the next one I'm going to call in for a moment is, once upon a time I was talking about borderline personality disorder, not in necessarily this type of public forum, but in public no less. And someone heard me talking about it and he said, "Would you meet my daughter?" And I said, "Sure, I'd love to." And I started having conversations with this wonderful person on video and on phone named Lauren. And since Lauren has come on board to help us with regional coordinated access in the Ontario region and in the provincial landscape, helping us upgrade systems of care that keep in mind her experiences. And so, Lauren, I'll let you tell everyone a little bit about yourself, and welcome and thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you, Shawn, and thank you, Melanie. That was very moving, and I really resonate with everything you said. I think yeah, I've been living with emotional dysregulation for a very long time, and I think that I just really relate to what you said, because I think similar to you, when I was officially diagnosed, I came into a lot of stigma and information, and I think a lot of the things being thrown at me, it was hard to make sense of, and I think I just have so many memories of like the first point of contact that I got was so negative and so stigmatizing. So I just think that that really, yeah, I just really had to make a choice, and it was really hard. And I just really, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what to say about myself and my journey, just that I really appreciate being here. And I've dealt with BPD for a very long time, and I was diagnosed at 14. So that was a really big time in my life, a teenagehood. And yeah, so I think I come here with just wanting to share a bit about my experience and what I've learned as a human, and what has helped me and what has not helped me so much. But yeah, I guess that's a little bit about me. Kind of all over the place, but I'm excited to kind of talk more about myself and my experience tonight. And yeah, my family is also a big part of that story. So thank you, Shawn.
That's wonderful, Lauren. Well, I know that you have a lot about your story and a lot of your heart to share. That's how I get to interact with you. So I'm pleased to be able to bring you to this moment. The next person I want to bring in, I'm just going to tell this quick. So we were just debating whether we should tell this, and everyone kind of said we should, eh? So I'm known very well to be long in the tooth about another thing, and that's being in the addiction counseling, the psychotherapeutic world around substance use disorders, not just dismantling stigma with my organization CAPSA, but with other things I do. And one of the things I always wanted to be most was like the people that helped me. They helped me with BPD, and they co-occurringly helped me with my substance use disorder. And that doesn't come easy. That's after 20 years of hardship. I found people that gave me a different experience. And so I had the opportunity to work in a treatment center, much like the places I went, and it was so important. And the person I bring in now was the last person I ever had as a client in the inpatient world. But I never saw him as a client because we just spent presence, relational time together. And he was the first person I ever really talked to about my own diagnosis of BPD. And so it's a real pleasure to bring my good friend Alan Scott in, who we kept each other. And I think I learned as much about me as I did about him in those few months, eh? So welcome in, Alan, and it's amazing to see you again.
Thanks, Shawn. It's yeah, no, I wouldn't have my career if it wasn't for you, Shawn. So, I mean, you've been an inspiration to me. Sorry, I'm getting emotional. I don't know why. But yeah, I mean, you helped me in the way that I needed to help. And I want to thank you for that, Shawn. Thank you. Um, so my journey started with BPD in September 2020, 2013. And I was alone. My partner just left me. I didn't know what it was. No idea. And, I still remember sitting on that computer desk and my dog is behind me, you know, and he's looking at me like, what's wrong with you? Like, what's going on? Because I was delusional. I was hallucinating. I was like, I wasn't myself. And, it wasn't until a few years later that I was in a social worker's office. And she asked me, did anyone explain what BPD is to you? I said, no, had the time to explain it to me. And she said, "Do you want to explain to you?" I said, "Absolutely, please." And she said, your emotions didn't develop properly." That's how she put it. And it all made sense, you know, um, why I was lashing out, why I was, so, up and down all the time. Um, my journey has taught me to be an advocate. It's taught me to break down the barriers. It's taught me to, that labels are made for clothing. That's it, you know, and, I don't like stigma. I don't like judgment. I don't have time for it in my life, you know, and I'm I'm huge on breaking down the barriers. I love taking that hammer and just breaking down those walls. So with that, I want to thank you, Shawn, for inviting me in, and I'm looking forward to this. Thank you.
Thanks, Alan. And so we were wondering who would be, we wanted a certain amount of people when we were thinking about this, wondering who's going to be next. And as I said, it was hard to find people for this, actually. Not that I didn't know all of you and I was meeting you and throwing this together and saying, I just cannot wait to bring some knowledge and some wisdom to folks who are very invested in hearing this story, okay? Our story. And then I saw an email in my inbox to the folks at OMBPD from this person that said, I write about BPD. I have BPD as part of my life and I write about it. And what I really care about is finding a way to use my writing talent to demystify this whole thing. And it stuck with me. And the first thing I said is we have to have this person in the panel. But before that, I have to meet her. The same way I knew some of you and wanted to meet some of you. And then I had these wonderful conversations with you, Jaden, and we became thick as thieves in 1 minute, like I'd known you forever. And so I'm so pleased that you're here, and maybe you can tell some folks a bit about you.
Sure. Hi. Hi, everybody. Um, First of all, uh, it's insane how we're all in different places and we're all, we've lived different lives, we've worked different jobs, and I'm like listening to all these stories and I'm like, oh my God, me too. Like, oh my God, I totally get it. Like, the being overwhelmed, all that sort of thing. Similarly, I was diagnosed at 16, um, which was I thought a lot of clinicians actually at the time told me, oh, well, you actually can't diagnose under 18 because you're going through puberty and you're probably just being dramatic. And I was like, okay, cool. So nobody else in my high school is doing the things I'm doing and feeling the way I'm feeling. Like something's for sure fishy. But I had gone through I had already been in therapy and like the mental health world because I was diagnosed at age 12 with OCD. So that seemed to be a pretty smooth diagnosis, whereas the BPD was a little bit harder to deal with, harder to talk about, harder to get clinicians to understand for sure, especially with being so young. I'd always like to think that I'm pretty eloquently spoken, or at least eloquently enough that like people understand me. And so after being diagnosed, similar to Alan, it was a very, very dark period of my life. Um, was not doing well, was recently through a breakup. It was a lot, it was a bad space in my life. And getting the diagnosis definitely made sense for me. This was like, I'm 20, so this was like 4, maybe almost 5 years ago. So things were obviously way more accessible. I could look into DBT. I could look into EMDR and MBT and all of these things. I felt like I could have a lot more of a community. So in terms of finding the other people that had stories like me and lived lives like me, it was shockingly easy. It was just more so the medical and social barriers that definitely did it for me. I work in journalism. I'm in my third year of university doing journalism and women's and gender studies. And I recently wrote a piece about BPD, my first like long form piece. And half of the people that I showed it to just to edit, like my peers at university, were like, "Oh, what is this? wait, I thought this was oh, is this like bipolar disorder? They always assume it's bipolar first. I'm like, no, close, not the same though. And so I dealt with I'm trying to through my work and hopefully in more mainstream journalism as I graduate, I'm trying to, as Shawn said, demystify. That was my email to him. Piece to demystify BPD. And we both really liked that word. I'm looking to not only explore all the facets of BPD and how different yet similar it is in so many people's lives, but also prove that you can be like everyone on this Zoom is successful. You know, we are talking just before this about how hardworking and high achieving people with borderline are, you know what I mean? And the first thing that I thought when I got that diagnosis is, oh, my life is over. You know, it's over. I'm screwed. I can't go to university. All these things I had planned out are not gonna happen. I was very, very focused on like finding love, getting married, all those things, which is crazy when you're young. But you know, I thought, okay, cool. So I'm never gonna be able to be in a relationship. I thought, oh my God, I'm a burden to my parents. Everything is making sense. And it was it was harder to cope with the diagnosis at that time than what was actually going on. You know what I mean? And I had a few clinicians afterwards look at me and look at my diagnosis and say, "You're too smart to be borderline, actually. Your grades are too good to have BPD." And I'd say, "What?" Does this equate to my knowledge, you know, to how I understand the world? Are my emotions dysregulated? Are they still currently after many, many years of treatment? Yeah. Oh my gosh, I woke up this morning, I was so angry, hour later, smiling. You know what I mean? It's still such a lived reality, but that doesn't mean that I can't do what I want to do and doesn't mean that I am not successful in my career and that I do not have strong interpersonal relationships. Um, and doesn't mean that I'm abusive or that I'm some sort of malicious person. So I'm hoping through both this and like the other work I'm, God willing, going to do in my life, that people will just maybe not understand completely, you know, they don't know our lived experiences, but be able to look at the current stigma and immediately realize that that is false and that anyone spreading that and anyone believing in that, there's an error of falsehood. It's a fallacy. You know what I mean? And that's the good thing about something like this, all of us talking together, because it's way easier to understand when it's someone's lived experiences and when it's someone talking to you conversationally. And even listening to everyone's experience, I'm like, oh my gosh, you know, it's like a ton of different me's. So that's me.
Thanks, Jaden. And folks, Jaden asked me if I would weigh in on stuff. And in my life, I have the real pleasure of people asking me questions all the time that show up in my inbox. And look out for writing from Jaden in the future, because those were serious questions. I actually wasn't able just to fire off answers. I had to think for a little bit. So to everyone's point, we're told we walk on eggshells, and that's what the literature says. We're called emotional hostage takers. We're called abusers. Sometimes we get the double term substance abuser and relationship abuser. And we're labeled in these ways. Alan, let's break those words down, all of that. And so today's about a few things we know. And maybe now you just after you meet all these people I admire so much and a privilege to be with, you can understand, audience members, that we do know a few things, eh? This is an elite group of people who all feel the same way about something. And although we could think back sometimes and not always remember what caregivers said to us, we sure remember how they said it. We remember what it felt like. And so I just want to start off with a strength-based moment with you folks. Try to be unrehearsed to the best possibility for us. But I did say I would start with this with everyone to be transparent. And I just want you to think of one thing, whether it's a caregiver, a clinician, a family member. What's one thing someone did for you in your journey when you were struggling, when things were difficult, and when you weren't at your best? What's one thing someone did for you that showed you that they weren't stigmatizing you, that showed you that they did listen to you, that they did understand you? What's something that's happened where you're like, wow, some more of that, please? And anyone just feel free to jump in since we're fireside chatting it up. Some more of what, folks? Giving those people that are listening their first tool, we can point you in the right direction. I can see Melanie. Here we go.
Well, I will say one thing that you just said, which is beautiful. Sometimes you won't remember everything that happened, but you'll remember, how, and that's the dissociative amnesia. And I deal with that
Mm,
all the time. Like there's these memory gaps that happen,
mm,
right? And I know everybody that's experienced trauma, not just BPD, they're like, whoa, I can't remember all these gaps, right? And I just
mhm.
wanted to point that out because that's a really big thing for anyone who's even listening. Because with the trauma, you're like, wait, I can't remember, but I still remember, right? In your
Yes.
body. Okay. And I just want to move to the next point that you're asking. And I honestly, without sounding cheesy, my husband, because I'm a recovering codependent and I'm a recovering everything. Just a joke. But as a recovering codependent, to be honest with you, everything was pick me, and all the symptoms would come up from rejection sensitivity, abandonment. Oh God, emptiness still is something I deal with, and that I just will never believe will fully go away. And I've radically accepted that. Okay. But with my husband having to not just keep convincing me I'm here, I'm not going anywhere, you're safe. And you have to understand for me, safety is just tenfold the hardest thing, right? When I came from a world as a child and I've continued to create a world that if somebody could look at me and tell me they're there, and I don't need him to be there, but I trust he's there. So this interdependency where I've got my life and he's got his, it's nothing I ever had before, right? It was always this constant people pleasing, this constant trying to control things where there was no control in my life. So with my husband, finally, 15 relationships later, the list goes on, right? Pick me, somebody pick me, right? Begging. Um, it's different. It's a love that's not conditional. It's a love that's unconditional. It's a love that it's understood. There are boundaries. There are things that are, you were talking about relational, Shawn, right? You're interrelational. There's so many beautiful aspects that I only now can see after years of training, after years of understanding what to me real love is. Love isn't always butterflies and sugar and rainbows. Love is work, but it's the work also for me trusting myself in my body. And it's stuff that I can also show and model to my clients because sometimes I used to make jokes in the support groups I ran with Emotions Matter, and people would look at me and be like, "Aren't you bored?" And I'd be like, yeah, some days I'm bored. And I'm appreciative of it finally, because boredom is a part of understanding that it's not always this quick dopamine fix. It's not always that I'm going to dye my hair every day. I'm going to get a new piercing. I'm going to go do this impulsivity, right? That chronic fix that we need. So for me, to answer the one thing that I needed, I've had many people, but my husband just understanding that without sounding like a cheese ball, I feel safe in my body.
Oh, Melanie, I think that's so important. We're all seeking safety, what we used to call trauma work. You'd know that. And I always offer to people when I train them about substance use disorders, we're seeking safety and we're emotionally dysregulated. As I work with many parents, they've phoned me a lot, talk about their kids, eh? And they say, my kid has BPD, and sometimes they don't, turns out, but sometimes they do. And when they do, they're explaining all these behaviors, not thinking of them as symptoms. And so often, Melanie, I say to them, your child is unsafe in that moment and they're scared because they're not safe, and it's not just in their emotional scape and in what's going on in physical reality. It's neurophysiological. It's the same system as trauma. So what I'm hearing from you is some safety and acceptance has gone a long way, and an understanding that that's what you need. Alan?
Yeah, when I hear the question of, the word need, what did I need from somebody? It's to be looked at as a human being, it's to be understood as a human being, it's to be accepted for the person I am, not the diagnosis I have, because that diagnosis does not define me. You know, I don't let any diagnosis define me, and I don't think anybody should, because we are more than that diagnosis. We are more than those letters, you know. I'm creative, I'm intelligent, I'm a friend, I'm a partner, I'm all these great things that people tend to not see because of those three letters. my diagnosis, you know. Um, but the one person that made the difference in my after my diagnosis was that social worker, you know, and I'll be forever grateful for that moment with her.
Something in that, moment for me is that I've got a lot of uptick across the sector, as my illustrious introduction said. I noticed somebody nodding me. Holy cow, how much can they say about this guy? So I'm not sorry about that, by the way. If it was up to me, it would have been like 45 minutes long. But let's just say I've got a lot of uptick saying something about dignity. People think that I invented this because of the lack of wellness that I didn't invent dignity. That's not what I'm saying. But the lack of wellness we experience around stigma for substance use disorders. But I started it shortly after I met you, Alan. I started saying client-centered care goes nowhere if we don't start with dignity, because we're told we're going to have people first and client-centered, but that means you're going to give me some choices to pick. But while I'm picking those choices and directing my own care, how I feel when I'm with you, caregiver, family member, friend, or clinician, matters. And the only way that can matter to me in the way you're saying, Alan, is if it starts with dignity. And it means that it's unconditional. Our shared humanity is more important than any choices I make or any experience I have or any letters beside my name. And in fact, it's not conditional that we have shared humanity and that I don't have to earn it with my regulation. Someone that wanted to be here and just couldn't for a number of reasons. There were two people I invited that just couldn't do it for the sake of protecting their careers. Not that we're endangering our careers, I don't think, but I respect what they're saying because they would be. She would say, hey, you know what, Shawn? Why do I have to always be regulated? And then people go, oh, that's because of those three letters, you're dysregulated. But don't humans get dysregulated sometimes in a regular way? So I really hear that, Alan. Yeah, that's important. Jaden.
Yeah. So similarly, not to be cheesy, just like me. No, no, not saying you're cheesy. I'm saying I'm cheese balling out right now. My partner for sure, as well as my mom, have we've worked out a little bit of a system that I find helps. Um, because for me, both with my BPD and my OCD, it's a lot of beyond just validation seeking, it's a lot of kind of confirming that the things I'm feeling and thinking are normal. And so when I was growing up, I would tell my mom like my every thought, my every move, and be like, is this normal? Is something wrong with me? Is this normal? Is this normal? Almost like compulsory. Um, and so as I grew up and whatever, my mom got very used to problem solving. So I'd come to her with, hey, I'm feeling this, this, and this. And she'd say, okay, do this, this, and this. And a lot of the times it worked. But there were some times where I knew what I needed to do. This is like after doing, I did DPT, I did EMDR, I did CBT, I've done all the letters. So I have that skill set, you know what I mean? I have the things that I need um, to get through my issue, but sometimes it's just to be heard, like we were talking about. It's just to be understood. And so my mom and I came up with this thing where I would talk about what's going on, and she'd say, okay, do you want advice or do you want comfort? And so that was a thing that I also do with my partner. He's very, very good at comforting me. Same with that. I've got crazy, crazy levels of abandonment issues. And he's very good at providing the stability of not making me worry that he's gonna up and leave or anything like that. But he's another person where I mean, it goes both ways. He comes to me with his issues, I come to him with my issues, and we say to each other, okay, do you want advice or do you just want a shoulder? Do you want an ear to listen? Because sometimes that's all it is. Sometimes I know what I'm doing, I know my plan, I know how I'm going to navigate um, a negative emotion, a lapse in judgment, impulsivity, something I did impulsively that negatively affected my life. I know I have a plan in my head as to how I'm going to navigate. I just want someone to hear me, and I want someone to tell me that I'm not bad. That was my big thing. I was always so worried, especially reading a lot of stuff online and talking to a lot of people and having even partners before who have been like, oh, oh, crazy, crazy BPD girlfriend, and oh, they read online all these things on Reddit about these malicious people, and you're so evil. And so I internalized a lot of that. And I didn't want to talk about stuff with partners or with friends out of fear that they would judge me and that I would fall into that subcategory with them. Um, and so that's what happened. What made me kind of self compartmentalize and be able to work myself out of things. But sometimes I just have ones that are just, I just need someone to look at me and be like, Jaden, you're human, you know? It's not, you're not like we were talking about the label of BPD. I really, really heavily identified with it. And then as now I'm talking to different people with lived experiences, clinicians, I agree. I don't like the verbiage because it's that intrinsic tie to personality, right? And so sometimes when I just want to be heard, beyond just people reassuring me, I just like to know that someone, like Alan said, sees me, for what I am, for who I am, not for experiences I've had, not for, meltdowns, not for crying sessions, not for issues with addiction and suicidality and all of the things that come under this umbrella. To just see what's going on and be like, you will be okay. You've been okay with everything before. You've made it this far. Sometimes you just gotta brace yourself and go on forward. So I feel for me that's the most workable solution that stuck with me until now in my long 20 years of life.
You're like the rest of us, I think, Jaden. You're packing a lot in. I'd say fear, right? So many people would ask, and I've had these experiences. Folks, we go fast sometimes. We might get complicated. We might talk in circles. We might talk you into circles. We might talk those we love and care for in circles. I certainly do this to many of my friends, obsessing over my job or whether I'm people like me enough, or whether so and so, my boss especially. I hope he's not in this room, but my poor boss, I'm like, you don't appreciate me. And this is a human being that's the nicest to me ever. And the people that love me and care for me know that I have to go through that process. And when people sometimes push back on it, in a way that seems like they're just saying they don't see me. They're saying, Shawn, you're crazy. You have the problem. You are a problem. I start going faster, eh? I start going faster. And what it is that I'm afraid. It's fear that we're going to be abandoned. And people seem to see that as us being malicious people. But what's behind the fear of abandonment? I know you know this, Melanie. I know everyone here knows this, but I know Melanie and I have spoken about this. The fear of abandonment is the fear that I'm not worthy to be loved. And I've spoken to maybe some of you in this room that aren't in our chat right now. I've spoken to you and your children for this privilege of doing this work in this region after these talks. And their children say, my mom is my most fierce advocate, and mine is too in my life. But they'd say also, in that moment, I'm afraid my mom doesn't love the core person that I am inside that Alan and Melanie are talking about.
And I was going to add to you, I always have this, I've read this beautiful publication um, last year and it stuck with me for, I think the 10th symptom, honestly, I fight for it all the time. The
Mm.
undercurrent of BPD is shame. Because if you leave me, it's really, I just keep abandoning myself in every interaction. So I really work regardless of anybody. I think everybody lives with some bouts of shame, but really it's you keep abandoning yourself in every interaction. So learning to come back home. And every human I've ever sat with, any human, but even with BPD, like let's bring it up every notch, every symptom, let's take it to level 12, right? Depending on where you are, everybody's an individual. But that undercurrent of shame, okay, you were going really quick, the fear starts setting in. Oh no, by doing my job, I'm gonna do. So we're not human doings, we're human beings. So we got to bring it back. Just take a deep breath, everybody. Everybody in the room, all the people watching, because if you're going to remember one thing, you didn't come onto this planet to do anything. You just came to be yourself. And when we start reminding ourselves in that moment, you don't have to abandon yourself. You just have to show up. Because I was nervous today, because I was like, what am I going to have to say? What am I going to have to be? Not be, do. And then everything starts to kick in. The symptoms start revving up. And listen, hello, we're just who we are, right? So I just love what you said because it really is how brain and everything, the body starts kicking in. So,
Thanks, Melanie. Lauren, I know that you've had a lot of different experiences because I have the privilege of knowing you for a long time now. Maybe you want
Yeah.
to bring something into this conversation about your
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah, I'm not sure what to add with like everything is so resonating with me, but I think what really like the people that I think of is my family and some dearest friends of mine, and I think what really made a difference is just believing in me until because a lot of the time when I was a kid, I couldn't believe in myself. I didn't have that yet. And I was told not to believe in myself, right? Like I was told why would you? Like you're not going to turn out to be anything. So I think that was really hard to kind of like not believe in myself, but I had a lot of people around me in my circle um who believed in me until I got to that point. And sometimes still these days I'm not at that point where I still am fighting that and I don't believe in myself and I'm hard on myself. But I still have like so many people in my corner who are helping me just show me that I'm allowed to believe in myself and I'm allowed to take space. And yeah, I don't know. I just think that um what everybody said, like just seeing me, validating me, not judging me, just like showing me that you're gonna be here and not give up on me, and that it's okay to go through the hard and bad times together, but like we're gonna do it together, right? So, I don't know if that helps at all, but yeah.
Sure does. So some reassurance that we're not alone. I'm going to pivot for a
Yeah.
second, but I want to just add on to that belief part. So
Yeah.
I have a phrase that I've added a lot into my supporting of others. And I didn't invent it. I have my own catchphrases, but this is one I borrowed. You could imagine me, folks, not at my best, because we're going to talk now a little bit, folks, about when we're not at our best. When we're not at our best, we're under a different type of stress than any other diagnosis that exists. It may not, to me, it does not feel like anxiety. Dysregulation feels way different. It feels stronger, more powerful because fear and anger and power can all come out at once. For though, if there's any psychologists in the room, we could nerd out on Carl Jung and talk about it almost possessing us, eh? And as we're having this pressure and we're not at our best, someone said to me, Shawn, I can't believe in you for you, as I was yelling at my clinician and scaring him. I was scary. I know I was. And he said, I can't believe in you for you, but I'll believe in you with you. And he said, but first, here's some things I need. And what he did and the way he explained it is something I've told this group before was he talked about boundaries to me, but he didn't use the B word at first because everyone's going to ask about boundaries and I want to pass it around. I really want to hear what you all have to say. But one thing I offer to people when I help them about boundaries is this thing that this man taught me. Was in psychiatric services and threatening to murder him, frankly. We're friends now, though it's okay. I love this man too. And in that hospital, in that psychiatric care, he said, this boundary is not against you, it's for me so that I can help you. And I believed him. And I've always approached everything like that. The single greatest question I got from these lectures now, this is my fourth or fifth one, is as I told you folks in the preamble and in the chat was, what about boundaries? So let's just call this section, everybody, what about boundaries? Jump in. Let's hear it.
I think a boundary for me is like, allow me to feel what I'm feeling, you know, without judgment, without a label. Like, just allow me to feel it, because I need to feel it in that moment. Like, if I'm not feeling it, I don't, then what am I doing? Right? Like, another boundary with me is like I said, don't define me by my diagnosis, you know? No, I'm Alan Scott. I'm not, and I used to define myself as the mentally ill one, you know, until it's like, Alan, like, you're Alan. You're not, BPD. You're not PTSD. You're not all these, what, you're not what you have. You're who you are, you know? So, like, I wouldn't label myself. So I definitely don't want others labeling me or judging me or, you know, defining me. So I define myself.
Can I just say, Alan, there were times in our relationship where We had a different dynamic than we do now, as we told the group, that we were angry with each other, right? And do you know what? We made a decision that that was okay because we weren't going to tell each other who and how we had to be. And look at us now. Yeah, boundaries, folks. What do you think? I know that you have thoughts on this, Melanie. I can see you deeply thinking. Boundaries are,
Well, it's
there's,
like do we want to talk about what doesn't work? Do we want to talk about what works? Okay, I can say one thing. Sometimes you can model boundaries. It's like, for example, there's a lot of different families. This is why I do individual therapy, right? And I have to hear context. So I'll give you an example because we're lived experience. I love my Jewish family. I love that my mother loves to call me. But I run a business, so does 9 to 5 work to call me 15 times in the day? No, I love you, Ma. If you watch this, this isn't because I don't love you. This is because I love you. But boundaries have to be consistent. They have to be very, very clear, and they have to understand for me, they have to be predictable and they have to be calm. These are some things I wrote down so we can understand this. So, for example, what does it mean if I say, please respect that I don't pick up between 9 to 5? It means if you call me before, I'm not going to pick up. If you call me after, right, 5, I may not pick up. If it's an emergency, I'll give you what to do. Now, if I get a guilt trip, I'm not going to respond. If I get a smorgasbord of yada, 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 I'm not going to respond. So what do? I model. It means that I don't start getting into the enmeshment of it, getting into the conversation of it, which I used to do, start getting unraveled by the emotions of my mom's emotions. Well, now that you didn't pick up, it's 8:33. There's a lot of different things that can happen, right? So what does it mean if I pick up at 8:33? By accident? It means it's been disrupted. So sometimes it's actually my fault, then I have to take accountability. So again, consistency, clear. What if there's an emergency? You have to still be clear. Okay, if you do need to reach me and there's an emergency, call my husband. So this is just one example, right? This is the context of my life. Another thing, it's not just boundaries for the client, parents that are listening. There's also boundaries for the parents, right? So everything has to be clearly stated what it is. Again, with rejection sensitivity, with abandonment, these things are really tough. So when you start doing them and things start changing, people don't understand. You have to practice. Like, I'm giving you one example with a phone. That's hard because somebody might go, well, my mom won't understand. My dad, I don't know if I'm comfortable doing that, right? A lot of people don't like saying no. It's mean. I'm being mean. You're not being mean, but how are we supposed to change if we don't try new things, right? So let me say, okay, so simple things. I wrote a couple things because I knew boundaries was going to come up. So for example, I said calm, predictable, consistent, delivered without anger or threats, right? We have to understand just the same way everything can feel very hard. When boundaries come suddenly or they're frustrating, it doesn't feel safe again, right? So I say boundaries aren't punishments, they're just clear. So again, I always say it's individual to what the boundary is. So if you gave me examples, I work individually to what that boundary is. So we have, if voices get raised, I'm just going to take 10-minute breaks. There's different boundaries, right? But I love modeling. So if you can't find the words, show what your needs are. And sometimes people can follow, they don't follow, you keep showing it. Keep showing it. There's so many different ways I work on boundaries, but maybe somebody else can.
Melanie, I love that. Repetition works, eh? Jaden?
Yeah, I have to be so frank. I suck at boundaries. Um, I am I frozen? Wait, am I frozen on your screen? You can see me? Okay, cool. Can't see myself. I hope I look fine. Boundaries, I'm bad at boundaries. Mind you, again, I'm just a baby. But I remember growing up, again with my mom. She needs an award. She's been the one who has just been beside me, and holding me up throughout everything in my life. I remember we went to a meeting it was like a support group for OCD, which again, comorbid, co-occurring disorders, very, very common with BPD, especially the substance use disorder, which I've also struggled with, always will. But things like that. My mom had to put down boundaries. They said at the, again, it was asking for reassurance, lots and lots of reassurance. I still ask for reassurance, and I'm dealing with that. But they said, when your kid, at least for OCD, when your kid is saying, "Oh, mom, is this thought normal? Is this thought normal?" You can't keep giving that reassurance again and again and again and again, because it's like overworking a muscle. You think that the muscle's getting stronger and stronger, but you're just punishing it and punishing it and punishing it. It's getting weaker, it's getting sicker. Um, but a lot of the time, especially when I was first diagnosed, when I was still in high school and into early university, I felt personally attacked by people putting boundaries on me. 100%. I had a very, very bestest friend who I still have, love her dearly. But she in high school was also going through some mental health struggles. And she had to be like, I love you and I am here for you, but I also need to take care of me. And I am dealing with this, and if you want to help me deal with it, you can help me deal with it. If you want me to deal with it alone, I can deal with it alone, but I just need to take something off my plate before I put you on mine. And immediately I was like, cool, so you hate me, you want me dead. You know what I mean? And that's something I still struggle with sometimes. Like even with my partner who I love, he's hiding in the corner right now. Um, he will sometimes I'll always ask if he's mad at me. I'm always convinced someone is mad at me, right? And so I'll be like, "Oh, are you mad at me? Are you mad at me?" And he'll get frustrated and he'll be like, "What about me makes you think that I'm mad at you?" You know what I mean? He's like, let's not ask this question. If I'm mad, I'll tell you. You know what I mean? Same with my mom. It's are you mad at me? Are you mad at me? Are you mad at me? And she's like, "Jaden, you're putting something onto me that I'm not doing." You know, if you think I'm upset, be like, "What's wrong? What's going on?" But again, when we initially set those boundaries, I was so upset. I took it as a total personal attack. I was like, "Oh, you just don't love me for me. You don't this, you don't that." I had a lot of time to deal with that, and I'm getting way better at boundaries. But as much as people put boundaries onto me, I also put boundaries onto people. Similar thing to Melanie with family and stuff. I've got a bit of a strange father. He's not on this. Don't worry, I can talk. Uh, but I have to put boundaries within our relationship so I don't make myself sicker, so I don't become sicker um, from triggers and from things in this relationship. I like to think that I'm very uh, strong and I can power through anything and I can this and I can that, but there sometimes are things that are just inevitably going to trigger me. They are going to trigger me
Mhm.
no matter what I do, and I either have to set a boundary to stop those things or I have to brace through it, and sometimes bracing through it can do more damage. So, for example, with him, we have when we do speak, we set a boundary to not talk about the past. Which I know for a lot of people is super, super healing, and I would love to talk about the past in like a calm setting. But there is a lot of animosity and rage between the two of us when it comes to things in the past, and so that is a boundary that I set that he doesn't often respect. But if he did, it would make life way easier. You know what I mean? So I think my biggest thing would be explain boundaries. I like to have my boundaries explained to me. I like things being explained to me. Um, I like It's not like you have to be like, "Oh, I am doing this exactly because you said this," and but if you're gonna put a boundary on, like let's say, like my mom, who's like, "Don't ask if you're mad at me." I'd be like, "Okay, why?" She'd be like, "Well, because then you're assuming that I'm mad. I'm not mad. I'm not doing anything to you. You know what I mean? Tell me that you feel some sort of energy from me, and I'll tell you what's going on. Say, Mom, I feel like you're off. You know, can I do anything? Are you off or maybe it's me? Something like that. And even with my father, I've explained, I'm like, there's nothing productive that's going to happen from these tumultuous conversations and from regurgitating the same things because you and I are in very different thought schools right now. This is why I'm setting the boundary. I'm not setting the boundary to ignore all the amazing things that happened during my childhood and all the fun we had and all the good things. I'm setting this boundary to protect my mental health and your mental health because for us to continue our relationship, it's just not healthy. And so I really like the explaining of the boundaries, whether they be put onto me or I put them onto others.
Jaden, I like your mom, I can tell. Melanie,
I just want to read this because it goes perfectly with what Jaden was saying. And I didn't read it last time. I wrote this and it goes perfectly with what Jaden was
awesome.
saying. So imagine a family where every emotion spills onto everyone else. If one person is upset, the whole house is upset. Learning boundaries in that environment is like learning a new language. So boundaries aren't betrayal, they're what break the cycle and make healthy connection possible. So a lot of boundary work is when one person models their own needs and the other people can then follow. So that's kind of what, and even with the communication thing, so it's very hard because it feels sometimes like punishment or withdrawal or
Mm.
emotionally fused. And so the techniques sometimes, like even when I said modeling, it's even hard for you to do it, right? Because it's a new language, it's a new dance, it's a new everything. So I love what Jaden was saying because even your dad, everybody, we have hard time speaking new language. Oh, I have to do it again. Oh, dang it. I have to do it again. Oh, dang it. So sorry, I just remember being like, I really want to say that. And it went perfectly with what Jaden was saying. So
That's great. Boundaries are a skill we're talking about. We're talking about skillful boundary setting because sometimes boundaries hurt. And so, what I often ask people, so again, family members will say something to me like, how do I apply a boundary? And I said, the first question you need to ask yourself is, what is that actual goal of the boundary? Because sometimes the goal of the boundary is to force Janie and force Bobby to do what you want them to do. That's not what a boundary is. The boundary is about your own health and wellness. Okay, so it's interesting. What do you think, Lauren? Have you had some good and or difficult experiences with boundaries?
Yeah, similar to Jaden, actually, I really relate to that. The first thing that comes to mind is I have like a very best friend since I've known since I was born. She may be listening to this. And yeah, we're so close, and to this day we're like sisters. But I think yeah, when I was in high school and when we were both really struggling and going through like a pretty dark time for both of us, I think um we had to set a boundary and just kind of say like I think at that time when there was a boundary set, it felt so painful and it felt like a stake to my heart because I was like, oh, like I'm not good enough and all these things. And I'm sure it was just a lot of pain. But I think and it just yeah it was really uncomfortable. But I think now that like we kind of navigated that and grew up and shared kind of yeah, I don't know. Like I think it was important to kind of know that we weren't alone in it. I mean, like I think we set the boundary that we weren't going to kind of continue to engage in the things that were kind of making us go downhill a bit, but I think it was still kind of known that we were there for each other and that we were doing it for um our health and our wellness. And I think yeah, I think it just my experience was really similar to that, just having a like so many friends and kind of shifting from yeah, just from having those boundaries set and kind of having that feeling of um it's almost like it's a personal like it just feels really like I'm being attacked, but it's not it's taken a lot of work honestly and trying to like kind of navigate that because yeah, I think I like what Shawn said in terms of not like setting the boundary like it's really it's being with you and kind of explaining it and being clear and not and because there's a way to do it with kindness, I think, and there's a way to do it
Mm.
so the person knows like yeah, this is what I'm doing and this is the reason and this and it's not like to put shame or judgment or blame or anything like that. It's really just to um yeah, sit with that person and kind of can make sure that you can continue to um, move forward. I guess I don't know, but I think I really struggled with boundaries when I was a teenager. But now that I and me and my friend are so close, and it's just been so wonderful to see us come back together. I guess and just kind of um, yeah, I don't know. I've always I felt really alone sometimes when I was a teenager, but just kind of knowing that I have people that are, yeah, I don't know. I just shout out to Hannah. I'm just really thinking of her because she really helped me, and she yeah, I would say that we saved each other many times, and it just kind of at a time that we couldn't always be there for each other, it was important to kind of take a step back, and that was probably saved us in the long run as well. And it didn't feel like that at the time, but I think in the long term, like it really kind of made us um, find our way back to each other, I guess, because that's what we needed at the time. But it did not feel like that at the time, granted.
Mm. So for many of us that come for healthcare, I'm knowing you folks a little bit, we often have many presenting co-occurring needs, as many human beings do. But one thing we know is that we remember those in healthcare. We remember those as family and friends, because that's the same thing to many of us. It is to me. And we remember how people showed up for us. We collect you, folks that treat us the way Alan was talking about, and Melanie and Lauren and Jaden, that accept us beyond the understanding of a diagnosis. And we're getting some questions slowly rolling in. And I'm just going to weave them into the conversation. How about, right? Alan, you had something to add first, please.
Yeah, just a quick thing to add about
Yeah.
boundaries. One word that comes to mind, and it's an important word, is respect. Respecting boundaries, from both parties, you know, because if they're unrespected, are they really, what are they? You know what I mean? So
Yeah. I imagine myself as I weave some of this stuff that's coming in on the side to me. I'm doing this because I could see it on the side of my periphery. And um, I remember myself having boundaries set on me, and as an adult man holding the leg of someone trying to leave the room, screaming, "Don't look, don't go." I realized later through a lot of help what would it mean if they left. And I had those experiences for so many years that so many terrible things happened. And so I was diagnosed. People are asking about diagnosis, so we're going to talk about it. And when I was diagnosed, it was complex, because of course I had 20 years of experience with substance use disorders, and they were chronic and severe and acute. And what I wanted was some type of diagnosis. I was like, I know, Jaden, you were mentioning, yeah, I wanted is like bipolar. Sure, there's drugs for that. Is how I actually thought. Of course, right? Give me a pill and fix me. Don't tell me there's some flaw inside me that's complicated. And what ends up happening is I get this diagnosis. And people are asking us, how do you get the diagnosis? How did we get the diagnosis? And one thing I'll offer is this is the most overdiagnosed condition of all time. In this community, in this lecture series community, we've had my good friend, Dr. Louise Overington, come, formerly of the Royal, now at the Ottawa Hospital, who would talk about the statistical prevalence of overdiagnosis. In this room listening, we have people that I know that would gain a diagnosis in 15 minutes talking to a psychiatrist on a Zoom meeting like this. And I just like to reject all of those as harmful. But I will say that getting the diagnosis for me totally saved me, although it was painful. And so what happened, my diagnosis was a massive barrage of tests that lasted hours in multiple sessions. And everyone's nodding, and I love you for it, because this is what we need to tell people is the appropriate way to get care is for people to really find out if this is our diagnosis later on in my life, not because it's the thing I didn't want, but because I wanted to be sure, because it meant that I could find others like you folks here, and it meant that I could figure out how to navigate it. Melanie.
Yeah, I'm looking through a couple of the questions, and I think they're really important questions. Like 10 years ago, I went to Sunnybrook Hospital, and I talk openly about this. My diagnosis was hours, hours, like me reading through, I'm emotionally dysregulated, reading through like do you feel this way? And da, 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 like hours I'm sitting there. Then they leave the room and I'm sitting there like dun 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 dun. What's wrong with me? What's wrong with
Mm-hmm.
me? They come back, you have BPD, and I'm like sitting here like, I have a what? And at the end of the day, look, when somebody sits down with me, I don't care if they have the diagnosis or not. If they relate to the symptoms, I'm nuanced, okay? I want people to have their own individual feelings. If they don't like the label, that's fine. If they like the label and they identify, that's fine. But for me, like Sean's saying, there needs to be a stronger emphasis on understanding the symptoms that are really deteriorating and chronic for their life, right? So I don't want you to go to Google and be like, yes, 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 or TikTok,
Yeah.
yes, yes, yes. oh my God, Google 101, this person, like I watched this reel, I'm so screwed up. This person told me. And I'm not trying to like sound facetious or rude in this moment when I'm doing this like thing. What I'm trying to say is I want them to have an introspection and go inward and understand the gravity that it's tearing their life apart, right? So if they come to me or they go to a doctor or they go to their family doctor or they get a referral to a psychiatrist, there's so many different ways if you want the diagnosis. You don't even need a diagnosis, is what I'm trying to say. It's just the symptoms in your life, whatever it is. If you've been low mood for a month, you can't get out of bed, you feel suicide ideation, you just relate to all of this, okay? If you're so embarrassed because of everybody else, that's really okay. Because when you come to sit with me, I'll explain to you, F the rest of the world because you need to at least understand that you're in a place where it's safe and I can help you, not just me, there's many people that can navigate that the rest of the world doesn't matter. It's about you and getting the help that you need because the rest of the world doesn't understand how hard it is to live with something. They also just don't understand, period. Okay?
Yeah, yeah. They don't understand it at all.
Period.
When the
Point
questions
blank.
come up,
Yeah.
and I see you, Jane and Alan, but when the questions come up about why did you accept it and when and how, it's not like I was actually celebrating it. What it ultimately meant was I end up here with you folks and it's wonderful. But in the time period, it was super difficult because I believed all the terrible things other people believed. And then I went, oh no, I'm helpless and I'm totally flawed forever. But my diagnosis process was so unbelievably final. And I asked him, are you sure? And he said, with a piece of paper, and it said, yes, basically, right? They were sure. So it was what I was going to do about it, not whether I'd accept it or not. Jaden?
Yeah, I had a pretty avant-garde way of being diagnosed. Um, there was, as Sean had mentioned, I was really hoping it was bipolar because I was just my dad has it. And I know about, I know about lithium and I know about mood stabilizers and I know about antipsychotics. And I was like, okay, perfect. I can just kind of like pill it out of me. Woo. Which obviously that's not at all how bipolar works. Just by the way, everybody.
Yeah.
It is meds, it is combination of therapy and working at it. But anyway, my diagnosis, like Lawrence, was pretty young, and happened after a overdose. And it was a lot. It wasn't quick in the way that I had been assessed for. They had been, it was through the like CHIO system because I'm Ottawa born and raised, but I was not out in the world yet. And so they had been assessing me for I'm assuming just everything. And it too was a very long meeting, diagnostic meeting, and going through things and answering things. And oh my God, I was like, okay, I'm bored. Tell me what it is. But I understand the struggle of wanting to know what's up, and I think that knowledge is definitely power. I'm not saying WebMD things, but I'm saying going to genuine scholarly sources and reaching out and looking and analyzing, I completely understand that because for a lot of people, it's not very accessible to get a diagnosis, especially in Ontario. The mental health system is incredibly busy. It took my dad years to get into the Royal, to be seen, to be assessed, to be dealt with. I don't think he got his diagnosis until he was in his 40s. Mind you, that was bipolar, but I have a lot of very good friends who don't have the privileges I've had. They don't have the privilege of having done dialectical behavioral therapy. They don't have the privilege of being able to go to support groups. They don't even have the privilege of having parents or a partner who are accepting of them even wanting to get assessed. Do you know what I mean? So I completely understand the struggle of wanting to know what's wrong when you feel something's up. Because at the end of the day, you know yourself the best. And I think that's definitely I had my predictions before I went in, but I thought obviously like I'm like, oh, I don't know. I'm just a girl. I was in high school. I'm not a clinician. I'm not a doctor. I don't know anything. But I did a lot of research, and I knew something was up because I know me more than anything. And obviously that was validated through the psychiatrist who diagnosed me. But it's hard. It's hard. And dually with the accepting of it, um, I sometimes still feel like I don't accept it. This is the first time in my life I've ever publicly talked about it, actually. Like there are some of my closest friends, even at work, at school, family members don't know I have it. You know what I mean? And so accepting, getting the diagnosis is hard, accepting it is even harder. Um, I think it comes through these conversations. It comes through knowing you're not alone. I look at everyone else on this Zoom and I don't look at one person and judge them or think that they're lesser than or think that they are defined by it or that they're crazy or any of these terms that I've heard before. I look at every single person on this Zoom and I'm like, wow, you guys are so cool. Oh my God, you have these things and you have cool hair, Melanie. And and you're strong and you're telling me about all these experiences. So I think it's definitely accepting comes for me with community. That's what's helped me accept it so far.
Thanks, Jane. Alan.
Yeah, sorry. There's a question here that I really just I
Mhm.
feel burning need to answer.
Go for it.
It's about society, and why society has such a hard time understanding BPD. I feel it's not talked about enough in the proper way it needs to be talked about. It's not acknowledged enough that it needs to be where it needs to be, you know, see, like, and the media twists and turns BPD and all sorts of mental health concerns in ways that are completely false. You know, like I believe there's a movie about BPD, and it's completely erratic. Like, she's like they're going off the rails and going like they're like, no, that's not who we are. That's not what BPD is. You know, like if the media would portray mental health the way it should be portrayed in a proper way, then people would have a better understanding of what people with BPD, for example, go through, or what they deal with, or what they are trying to manage internally. You know, it's an invisible illness, you know? And yeah, I just feel like society has just made all sorts of assumptions and myths. And, I want to bust all those myths. So,
Lauren, did you have something to
Yeah,
add?
just
Yeah.
yeah, no, I was just thinking, in my experience, I really I was hospitalized when I was a kid, at 14, and I think that's when I got diagnosed, and it was hard because I think I kept getting sent home and being told you're just depressed or just like told that I'm just this, just that, which was really invalidating because I just wanted to know what was going on. And yeah, at the hospital they were sending me home, and I think my family and I really had to keep fighting for and advocate for why felt like this was needed, because yeah, it was so invalidating being told like you're safe, you're just looking for attention and stuff, and that's not what was happening at all. Like I was really unsafe and I was screaming that and they just weren't listening. So I think for me, just it was really important to yeah, just to have to advocate for have those people advocating for me on my side and stuff, because I think it was also an age issue, and I was just kind of no one really wanted to step up and help me. Everyone was kind of scared, I guess, and not sure how to handle it. And um yeah, I think it really just stuck with me, the people that kind of fought for me and yeah, it got me because I was later transferred to the Royal as well. It was really difficult navigating those systems as a kid, right? So it's just yeah, I think um, I wasn't really ever like, I think a lot of it was framed as attention and stuff, but really it's just I'm looking for connection, similar to what you said, like that community piece and having those people to connect with and to relate to and to be seen by and see. And I think all of that just really brought a lot of I don't know what the word is, all the good things though, comfort and validation and joy and all those peaceful things to my life. So yeah, I think it's just, yeah.
Thanks, Lauren. You know, we're not attention seeking, folks. We're
Yeah.
validation hoping. And
Yeah.
why the validation is the question, right? And so before I let you jump in, Melanie, I'm just going to address something that's picking my brain. So we're getting a lot of questions. Please keep adding them, folks. One of the questions is about accepting our diagnosis, and I am going to steer into part of the question, which wants to know why we accepted our diagnosis. But there's a second part of that question, and there's an implicit statement in it. And to be kind and respectful and gather in the people who are in the room and the gentleman that's asking about this, um, of the 200 plus people with borderline personality disorder diagnosis that we could confirm, because I bet the five of us can all figure out that yes, we do indeed have this diagnosis, because we're not diagnosticians, I don't think, but we know the nature of our experience. And as I speak to children and parents and family members, it's pretty easy to tell once we get together like this, eh, folks? And there's a strength in that. But the question that's implicit that I'm hearing is, why did we accept a diagnosis rather than just deny it and blame the rest of the world for our problems? And I never blamed the entire world for my problems, folks. And when someone is caught in an irrational belief, some of you may recognize this as a type of behavioral therapy that's applied to us. When we're caught in a irrational belief, it's because we're in pain and we're stuck. And so when people are pointing fingers outwardly, that's usually because we're in pain, eh? And so remembering that that's a symptom of the problem. And I don't have a lot of experiences with blaming the whole world. I have a lot of experiences with lashing out at people who don't validate me when I'm hurt, though. And so I just want to reframe that question for you a little bit, sir, that we don't blame the world for causing our problems. We get stuck in emotional dysregulation as a symptom, and it hurts. And when people think we're other blaming, then they think we're pleasure seeking. They think we're attention seeking. And then we get into why do we say those things and why do we have these ideations and all of those things. But there is a why, and we're explaining it to you. Melanie.
I love that you just said that because I was working on cognitive distortion yesterday with a client and on the one blaming. And, the thing is, it's easy to use the word you. But, you brought up young the other, like 10 minutes ago, and what we resist persists. Look, I
Yeah.
could sit here and say, I don't have something. I don't have this. I don't have abandonment issues. I don't have rejection sensitivity. I'm not this. I'm not that. And so I sit here hiding away in my chair because the rest of the world doesn't like it, or they don't understand it, or they don't effing care for it. And that's not my responsibility to own the projections of the rest of the world. I'm so sorry. You guys don't understand it. And I'm talking to the rest of the world because I have to explain something. And I wanted to say it in the very beginning. And I told Shawn I was going to give my spiel. There are 256 combinations of BPD. You can have 5 out of 9 symptoms, okay? That means every single person that you see today is absolutely different here on this panel. Then there's comorbidities, then there's context, then there's cultural differences. We're all extremely different. So same, but different. My favorite Thai expression. Meaning when Alan said, when they make a movie on somebody being hysterical with BPD, great. That's one snapshot of somebody. One snapshot, meaning I could snapshot Shawn's life, Alan's life, Lauren's life, Jaden's life, my life. You don't know any of us. I'm so sorry. So am I going to judge Dan down the street who's got bipolar, schizophrenia, any of this stuff? But the problem is because society does not understand, or they've had one experience with one person in their life and one thing that was dark for them. Then they go on the internet, lovely internet, and then everybody with BPD is this. And so this is there's no nuance, there's no understanding, there's no education. So this is why we fight. This is why there's only been one panel. This is why it's very sad. And I don't want it to be sad. I want it to be that Marsha Linehan said, we are tulips in a rose
Mhm.
garden and we are different. Look at how cool we are. I'm so sorry to say it, but we are cool. And cool isn't to me like the cool that you're thinking. Cool is eccentric, amazing, feelers, healers. I've never met anyone with BPD who is not talented, like extremely talented, poetic, singers, dancers. Go on. I'm going off because we only have 10 minutes. But why do we accept it? Because what you resist persists. And I'm not going to live in a world where I can't accept the things that I am. And they're wonderful, even the dark parts of me. So thank you. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thanks, Melanie. Don't leave yet, though. I still need you. Um, when I'm mining with families about their kids and they're saying, my child has BPD, and they said, how smart's your kid then? And they, right? How talented are they? What about this? What about this? So thank you for the strengths reframe. Alan.
Yeah, I just want to say, I just want to touch on the question, why did I accept it?
Mhm.
Because it saved me, made me understand me more. I don't need the world to understand me. I need to understand me. You know, I don't want the whole world to understand me. You know,
Hmm.
I want those that love me and care for me and support me to understand me. I want me to understand me. You know, and the all I ask is that people do not paint us with one brush. You know, we are a vast rainbow of colors here. And, just like Melanie said, like you see one snapshot of somebody with BPD, for example, and oh, suddenly everybody with BPD has that. No, no, please don't believe that. Please, I ask everybody viewing this to not paint us with the same brush, you know, um, because what you see is not what you get with everybody, you know. Gain a bit more understanding, a bit more education, educate yourselves on this diagnosis, you know. And I'm not talking about Dr. Google, okay? I'm talking about, legitimate resources out there that have the information, have the knowledge for you to educate yourselves on this diagnosis, because you just never know that someone you love may have this diagnosis.
Jaden?
Yeah. I'm gonna be honest with you. There were times where I did blame the world, after I got diagnosed. Not in the way that I went out and I was like, oh, screw you guys. But I especially, with my diagnosis being very young and having had experiences with trauma leading to CPTSD, I became pretty angry when I was a teenager, and I couldn't understand why. Why me? That was my big thing. Again, this is very teenage and melancholy, and that's how I was, you know what I mean? I didn't understand why. I said, oh, if this is a trauma-based disorder, why would those things have happened to me? You know, why do I have to suffer after the things that have gone on with me? But I like to think about my BPD like I think about being queer. I'm also queer. Um, Obviously, nose ring. Uh, Even if I don't, come out and say, I'm queer and I have these feelings, and if I bottle that all up, that doesn't mean that when I walk down the street, mind you, this is if I wasn't with my partner. This doesn't mean that if when I walk down the street and I see a beautiful girl, I'm not going to be like, "Oh my God." You know what I mean? These things are still going to be happening within me. And for me, that label, like we were talking about, again, not crazy on the verbiage, but the label in itself helped in my acceptance the same way labeling myself as bisexual helped. It gave me a term that can connect me to community, that can connect me to resources, and that could take that kind of anger and animosity that I had against the world and turn it into something productive. And I think that's what honestly made me want to do something like this or write about BPD and do a lot of my journalism based on mental health is because sitting there and hating the world and saying F you to everyone who's ever traumatized me, all it's going to do is keep me pissed off and grumpy. Those people aren't sitting up at night every day the way I am thinking. So I said, how can I take this and instead of blaming, use it to help someone else who would be in my position, who maybe is blaming the world, who maybe is feeling that anger. You know what I mean? Um, so that's my thought around that.
So a few quick things, folks. Thanks, Jaden. So if it was up to me, folks out there that we can't see, but we know you're here with us in spirit, and my friends here on the panel, if it was up to me, we'd do this for like 17 straight hours. And those who know me know I'm serious about that. But we have to be mindful, and we have to be mindful of time. So a few things. I do want to lay a couple pieces and then punt some final words to you. But one thing I'll say is that um, as we come for care, mental health, substance use health, we come for something specific. And we've been taught through media and culture and all the things we've said today to be shameful. And almost all support is about learning to not be shameful so we can work on our life. And one of the things that happens is that every now and then we find someone and meet someone in our journey while we're trying to figure our thing out, which is us, our humanity, while it's trying to do something like I meet a Melanie or I meet, any of you. And I'm not just trying to single you out, Melanie, but I know that in Toronto, one of the questions, Melanie's clinic is in Toronto. We're looking to find out something like I need some support and I meet someone. And so I'm just going to be just single you out for a sec, Melanie, be vulnerable is that how come I decided to reach out for help? I didn't. Someone bumped into me that looked me in the eye and something very special happened. I had the privilege of saying this on stages all across the nation. Someone gave me a different experience. They talked to me. They looked into my eye. They treated me the way all these folks are saying today. And I knew that they didn't think lesser of me for my struggles. And I knew they weren't afraid of me. And in that moment, that different experience opened the door for me to start my health and wellness journey. And I bounced around. I've been to over 100 different agencies too, like all of us. We've been around, eh? We've been around. And so one of the things that's really important is sometimes we find someone who gives us a different experience and they're the right person at the right time. Forget this healthcare word, eh? The right care at the right time. No, the right person. And so those of you listening out there, wouldn't it be an incredible privilege if you were that person that gave us a different experience? If you gave a different experience to the person you care for, whether it's in your professional or your personal life, I hope that I've done that for even just one person would be more than worth my while. As we all search for meaning in our life, we search for human understanding and our shared humanity that we're just telling you about in a conversation. Eh? This is exactly the conversation we'd be having if nobody was listening. And so take that away, maybe, if you can, is be that different experience. I know I sure try hard to be. Sometimes I fall short because I'm a human being. But when I don't fall short and I'm at my best and I do that and I gather people in, it's so life affirming for everyone. Last piece for me is we're all walking uphill together towards something better. When I stumble, please lift out your hand and help me up, eh? And please let me do the same for you. That's all we're asking for, eh? We have a few minutes, so maybe a 30-seconder for each of you. Maybe we'll go in reverse order that we started. So Jaden, a quick 30-second last moment.
Yeah, exactly everything you said. I'm looking through a lot of these questions and a lot of people feel confused. A lot of people feel scared, whether that be parents or people with BPD. And I think that events like this and reaching out and asking for help, one of the questions, what made you consider seeking help? For me, it was just exactly what you said. It was experiential. It was being seen by people and seeing myself and understanding that maybe my struggle and my hurt is not what people consider normal. I hate the word normal. I think that's a very, you know, stupid word, but you know what I mean? Isn't the way that the other people around me are processing emotions, are processing experiences, and I think that's definitely what made me want to reach out. And having that support made me want to reach out. You know, having my mom, being able to talk to her, having my partner, being able to talk to him, like having these people around you. They say it takes a village. It's so stupid, but it's true. the minute you feel that support behind you, you will want to go. You know, whether you think you have it, whether you think you have something else, whether you think yours is based in trauma, or if you think it's genetic, or if it's anything, having that support of people will make you be able to reach out and talk to professionals and talk to people like us with lived experiences and handle the things in life. Like someone here says, like, how do you view becoming a parent? I'm scared shitless. I gotta be real with you. But I know that I have people on my side. I know that I have a support system, and I know that if that is something I want to consider, I can talk to them. I can reach out. I can listen to myself and my body, and I'm just as capable. Lauren's just as capable. Alan's just as capable. Melanie's just as capable. Shawn is just as capable of doing anything, anything in the world. Being a parent, being the president, I don't care. Like, man, you could cure cancer. You know what I mean? It just, these are our lived experiences. It makes life hard to navigate, to be honest with you. But with that support, you know, we can continue to fight the battle because it's not like one day I'm gonna wake up without it. But having that support and having those people that understand me makes me want to wake up in the morning and makes me want to work hard. So
Thanks,
that's my
Jane.
bit.
Appreciate you, Lauren.
Yeah, just quickly about what you said, Shawn, about being that person and just kind of, because I think in my experience, I did blame the world at times, and there were times where I felt like, yeah, just all of those really painful experiences. But I think
Uh-oh. I think we've lost Lauren, everyone. Okay, so let's try this together, folks.
um,
Let's.
I,
Oh, Lauren.
I've found that I wanted to take my experiences and just help people and kind of put it towards something because I didn't want a teenager and I just and still feel now. So just being the person to kind of reframe it and like yeah, I don't think I never would have seen myself in social work, but ever since I've been through my experiences, I it's just it's everything to me now. So because I had someone to kind of reframe that for me and to help me show me that it's like I can do that and yeah.
Thanks, Lauren. We lost you for a moment, but glad you're back. Um, Alan.
Yeah, if I could say anything, it's, understand, educate, support, you know, and you just never know what difference you might make in someone's life by the approach you take with them.
Thanks, Alan. Melanie.
Um, I just want to say thank you first, Shawn. And I know that you mentioned my clinics in Toronto. I'm actually virtual all over Canada. So if
Ooh,
there's, yeah, so
okay, awesome.
that's just a food for thought. Not selling myself. Sorry, I didn't mean to come off
No,
like
that's
that.
good. That's good.
I do want to say this. I want to emphasize to the parents and to people who have the diagnosis or you feel like you do. I haven't met a person with BPD, regardless of where you are on the spectrum, that wouldn't hurt themselves. I don't even mean physically, I mean emotionally, more to themselves than the outside world. Okay. And so what that means is that every person feels to a level of love, extreme love. And that is so misunderstood, even through the words like manipulation, hate, anger. And that is anger is so the secondary of that is sadness. And that just needs to be understood. And so when I say that is that I never understood all of that for myself. So when you're even trying to understand all this, which is so hard to put into words, understand that when you can't explain it outwardly, because some people live with the hardest parts of it being on this part of the spectrum, like it just feels like it's all inside. There is a world of people who do get it and you're looking at them right here. And we love you. I love you. And I'm so sorry for the pain that you've experienced in your life. And please don't give up because it's extremely hard. And some days you do want to still give up. And I don't want you to. And I don't care what the world says. You are so important and you are loved.
So, folks, I'm Shawn. I'm living well with my BPD today, and I'm privileged to be with my dear friends who I admire so much from different walks in my life. Thank you so much for hanging out with me and having this conversation. What's lucky about me is I get to keep having this conversation with you folks. So more to come, eh? Love you all and thank you.
Thank you, Shawn, all of you for coming out. Your generosity of your time and your vulnerability and courage. Jaden, I'm that mom. Like I just so connect with what you've said. Um, all of you, like, do you want advice or do you want comfort? It seems so stupid, simple to say, but what an impact that one comment can have. Like, and I'm gonna get it wrong, Shawn, but I'm gonna try. It was something like when you set boundaries, I'm not setting this boundary to be against you. I'm setting it to help so that I can help you. Like that to me also for boundaries really resonated. And I think you guys have taken a huge step and like we're going to continue at OMBPD to do these things and support and educate society and break down the myths every corner we can. So much appreciated for all your effort and time and energy and love for this. It's but really appreciate it. Thank you. I think this concludes our lecture. Have a good night, folks.